I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. Recovery, the missing link for high performance. Now, I've spent a lot of my life working in professional sport, initially as a professional rugby union player in the UK and over in France, but predominantly as a chief executive of two professional sporting organizations. So I've got a very clear understanding of the importance of recovery, because when you deal with elite athletes, male or female, in any discipline, there is one unifying theme. They have a relentless focus on recovery, because they understand that in order to optimize performance, they must recover. Now, when we step outside of elite sport into industry, unfortunately, I invariably find the polar opposite. I find people working tremendously hard, but without any real understanding of how, first and foremost, they recover, and secondly, the importance of it. People tend to just push themselves and push themselves and push themselves until something breaks. Their performance starts to dip, or they suffer some sort of physical or mental health episode. And commonly that is articulated as burnout. But it doesn't have to be this way. And I've talked about recovery and some of the elements of today's episode in different editions of the Lonely Leader podcast. But it is still something that I find a need to focus on with practically every organization I work with and every leader I support, coach, or mentor within those organizations. So for me, it made sense to just break down 5 tips that I think are easy to implement and ensure that you have the best possible chance to not just create high performance, but to sustain it over the longer term. Because each and every one of us can deliver results if we just put the foot to the floor and work as hard as we can with a relentless work ethic. That will yield results. It will create high performance, but it's not sustainable. Something physically or mentally, as I've already said, will break. So for me, recovery is the missing link, because it's what is getting neglected. If we can make it a focal point as something that's a necessity, not something that is just nice to have, then you have a far higher chance of creating and sustaining high performance over the longer term in all facets of your life, both professionally and personally, which naturally gives us a far higher likelihood of creating unprecedented levels of fulfillment. So the first area I'm going to talk about is sleep hygiene. And that word really resonated with me about, well, hygiene, we know that we need the discipline to maintain our own hygiene when it comes to cleanliness. But for the vast majority of us, we don't apply the same discipline in terms of our sleep. I've been there. I was guilty of this. We simply go to bed and we wake up. Perhaps it's snooze a few times, and we are either a good sleeper or a bad sleeper. That's generally where my mindset was many years ago. And then I started to recognize, actually, there are things that I can do in order to improve that hygiene, to enhance our ability to get a good night's sleep, because we've all experienced the restorative effect of a really good night's sleep, where you wake up feeling refreshed and energized for the forthcoming day. And conversely, I'm sure you've experienced those nights where you feel like you toss and you turn, it's time to get up, you feel like you've only just gone to bed, and you experience the polar opposite, a lack of energy, a lack of enthusiasm for the day. Now, I remember listening to it might have been a podcast or a piece from the author Brendan Burchard, and he had a notion called 3-2-1, which I think is a perfect tool to apply to sleep hygiene. And it broke down as follows: 3 stands for aspire to eat your evening meal 3 hours before you go to bed. And this is to allow our digestive system time to process our meal as opposed to disrupting our sleep, trying to process a meal we've eaten late at night prior to going to bed. The 2 stood for a cut-off of work, no more emails, no more calls, 2 hours before we put our head on the pillow. And the 1 was a removal of digital devices, TVs, iPhones, iPads, etc., at least 1 hour prior to going to bed. Now, that's all common sense, but I like the simplicity of the 3-2-1. It's an easy trigger to refer back to because I'm sure you'll have experienced that getting in late at night from a long day, eating late, still working away on calls and emails, and then falling asleep scrolling some website or social media platform. We're all guilty of it. And when we expose ourselves to blue screens, as you'll already know, it reduces our ability to produce melatonin, which thereby compromises our ability to get some good sleep. So 3-2-1, not always achievable. I appreciate, certain nights we have to eat later. We might have commitments, activities, things with our wider family, or indeed at work that prevent it. But as an aspiration, we know we need to eat a little bit earlier. We need to come away from our devices and find a way to enhance our ability to sleep. And that's very personal. We all have different dynamics. Some of us live alone, some have partners, etc. But utilizing particularly that last hour of the day, rather than mindlessly scrolling on social media or website, whether that's reading a book, whether that's talking with your partner, whatever it is for you, but something that you can look forward to and cherish as a way to wind down the day. And for those of you children, you recognize the importance of structure and routine. You don't just leave your youngster rambling around the bedroom doing whatever they want. Invariably, they'll have a bath or a shower. You'll tuck them into bed and you'll read them a bedtime story. That is a calming, repetitive habit that they look forward to and enhances their sleep quality. Somewhere along the line, we've lost sight of that as we become adults. And I think step 1 is to return to some element of routine in that final hour of the day. Tip number 2, incorporate mini breaks throughout your day. Now, this is a challenge that has been massively exacerbated by lockdowns and remote working. We are not having enough breaks in the day. Now, I understand the mindset behind that. We've all got never-ending to-do lists, meetings that need to be accommodated, calls that need to be made, emails that need to be responded to. So we feel that any form of break is almost a dereliction of duty and a reduction in our productivity. But actually, the reverse is true. If you just sit chained to your desk for huge periods of time, then our energy, our ability to concentrate, and ultimately our productivity and performance is only going to go one way. It's going to diminish. Now, when we all used to work exclusively in an office environment, there were breaks in the day, walking to meetings, traveling to meetings, perhaps in our cars, stopping to grab a bite to eat, having an impromptu conversation with a colleague. But what remote working has done has made it increasingly easy to jump from one virtual call to the next, straight into our emails, back onto a call. And I often talk to people and ask how many meetings they have now compared to previous years. And because of the flexibility that remote working gives us, and because of the virtual tools we have with Teams and Zoom, etc., almost exclusively the response is far more than I used to. People are increasingly having 7 or 8 meetings a day, if not more, when you physically simply didn't have that in previous years. So I'm not knocking the advantages of remote working or these wonderful virtual tools we now have, but we need to be conscious of the fact that too many of us are sitting almost continually through the day, going from one virtual meeting or one digital task to the next. Now, it's a step. It's not a a dramatic change that I'm asking you. I'm not saying have 30-minute breaks every hour. It's just a few minutes. It can be as simple as standing up, walking away from your desk, stretching, going and getting a drink, a cup of coffee, etc. It's simple movements. And actually, in addition to resetting and restoring your energy, you'll find that your concentration is significantly enhanced. You've probably heard of the Pomodoro technique that was pioneered several, many years ago now when I first encountered that. And it sounds so simple, and it's something that I drifted away from using, but recently have returned to and found it significantly benefits my productivity and concentration. And that's just a simple timer that you set for 25 minutes. You focus specifically on the task in hand, but at the end of that 25 minutes, you allow yourself a 5-minute break, and then you return, set the timer again. And if you've never tried that, I encourage you to do so. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by the impact that that simple technique has on your productivity. So it's important to stress that when I'm talking about recovery, it's not huge gaps in the working day. I often get resistance when I first raise this issue that people presume that you're talking about, huge breakups in the working day. Here's an example: simple 5-minute breaks every 25 minutes can be massively restorative, both in concentration, productivity, energy, etc. It doesn't have to consume a huge amount of time. Point number 3, engage in regular physical activity. Now, I'm going to contradict my previous point now where I said it doesn't have to take huge amounts of time. This is a little bit longer than 5 minutes, but something as simple as 30 minutes a day of physical activity can have a huge impact on your mindset, your overall mental and physical health. And this is different for everybody, depending where you are on your level of fitness. This might be a daily walk with the dog. It might be a lunchtime walk. It might be some yoga. It might be going for a swim. It really doesn't matter. The options are limitless. What is important is making it a regular part of your routine. And for those people that wrestle with this topic of, well, I'm neglecting my productivity, I'm neglecting my to-do list, as I keep reiterating, quite the contrary. Physical activity has been proven time and again to enhance problem-solving capacity, to enhance energy, and actually, it is fabulously impactful in terms of idea generation. Some of the best ideas come to you when you are moving your focus away from the problem at hand. You might be sitting at your desk, desperately trying to come up with a solution or a strategy, and the ideas just won't come through. And then when you're out for a walk or out for a jog, it's almost like a door opens and the ideas come flooding in. And those of you that engage in physical activity regularly, I'm sure you've experienced this. So it is one of those ultimate win-win situations. You're helping your health, you are improving your energy, you will enhance your productivity, and it's something that unfortunately it's a non-negotiable. You have to find time to build it in, and it doesn't matter where it comes, before work, after work, in a lunch break. We must find the time to build physical activity into our day. Tip number 4, practice mindfulness and meditation to enhance mental clarity. I've touched on meditation in previous episodes, and as I've said before, it's a subject that often is met with a little bit of resistance or cynicism with certain clients. However, as with every tip and suggestion that I make, I would encourage you to experiment with it. Now, I fully appreciate taking time out for huge periods of meditation is not easy to incorporate into our daily strategy. So I'm not asking you to start there. If I give you a quick insight into how I began to experiment with it, perhaps it will feel more palatable and more accessible within your busy working day. And for me, it began with a simple first 15 minutes of the day. I endeavored to start getting up a little bit earlier than I normally did. I would make my first cup of coffee. I would sit down, put a timer on for 15 minutes, and just spend a few moments in that morning quiet, focusing on some deep breaths, and thinking about some of the goals that I would like to achieve in the future. Now, I appreciate that is a little bit of a hybrid, and there'll be some people out there saying, no, 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 clear your head, don't think about anything. And that is a form of meditation that works. There are a myriad of apps out there that will have you repeating an incantation over and over to just clear your head completely. That's fine. And I do experiment with those. But I like the idea of developing a little bit of visualization alongside the meditation. I like to spend a few minutes just focusing on my breathing, which is very relaxing and calming. And then I like to spend a little bit of that time just thinking of a handful of goals that I have and manifesting them. And that's why I wanted to express that hybrid, because I think it's the principle that's important here, not necessarily the mechanic. And the principle is about just taking a period in your day to calm, to slow down, to sit with a drink somewhere quiet. That's why for me, it's easy to do it first thing in the day. The chance of disruption, a phone call, an alert, a colleague or a family member disturbing you is minimized. And if this leads to positive results, you can explore and you can develop this practice further. So, again, the science is very clear that when you engage in some form of mindfulness or meditation, that it is hugely restorative to your ability to concentrate, to your subsequent productivity, to your energy levels, and to your resilience. You are always going to have challenges to deal with in your professional and personal life. It's impossible to avoid those. So, what we need to do is ensure that we recover as efficiently as possible so that we have the maximum possible bandwidth to be able to deal with them. So, I am the first to confess that something like meditation wasn't on my radar for many, many years. However, I stepped through my cynicism, experimented with it, and now it is a cherished part of my daily routine. I cannot advocate strongly enough the calming and restorative power about the first action of the day being to sit quietly in silence, focused on breathing, and then moving forward into perhaps looking at your goals for the day, the week, the month, or slightly further afield. And that is something that I explore in more detail with clients when we work in a one-to-one capacity, but suffice for this episode just to sow the seed of a concept that you can explore. Tip number 5, structure recovery into your working week. Now, if I asked you to open up your desktop calendar or the calendar on your mobile device, I'm certain I'd find a whole range of meetings, commitments, Teams calls, Zoom calls, etc. And I'd also be very confident to say that you will not forget to attend those meetings or virtual calls. It's in your diary, and therefore it is hardwired into your brain that each day you check what you have coming up in your diary and you make sure you attend the commitments that you have made to those individuals. What I also find, and what I'm confident I would probably find in your diary, is that very little is structured towards your recovery. It's all about the work that needs to get done. So I want you to apply the same rigor, the same professional integrity to your recovery as you do to your meetings. As I've already alluded to, you will not allow yourself just to forget things that are in your diary. It goes in your diary, and your professional integrity means I've made a commitment, I'm going to be there. So why not start to build in some of these recovery tools into your diary? Because if it's in your diary, it's a very visual prompt for you to say, that's what I'm going to do. You don't allow yourself to stack something else in that space. So just on today's suggestions, can you put something in the diary at the start of the day? 10 or 15 minutes of deep breathing and meditation. Wake up an extra 10 or 15 minutes earlier, make yourself that drink and put it in there. Can you build in some 5-minute breaks in the day that just pop up as an alert on your desktop or on your phone to say, take a walk, get away from your desk for 5 minutes? What about a cut-off point that you put a reminder in the calendar at the end of the day, whatever that time is for you, 8, 8:39? close off the laptop, so that there's a definitive end to the working day. And last but not least, where can you build in some physical activity? I appreciate everyone's got very fluid commitments, and you can't necessarily be as prescriptive as saying, I will do this every day. Some of us can exercise before work, but childcare or pet commitments might prevent it. So perhaps it needs a different slot for every day. Perhaps some days you can do it in your lunch hour. Perhaps some days it could be a late afternoon walk before you commute home. But taking time over a weekend to look at the week ahead and say, where can I find 30 minutes of exercise every day, and putting it in the diary. Again, I've got so much anecdotal and scientific evidence to support the fact that when you put things down in a diary and make that commitment, the likelihood of it occurring is so much higher than you simply listening to this and saying, yeah, I should build in some breaks. I should perhaps prevent myself going back to back to back on virtual meetings. I should do a bit more physical activity. I should stop working a little bit earlier. I should. Well, those shoulds will become I will and I can when you start to build things into your working calendar and diary. So, as ever, I hope these are useful. They are just 5 very simple points. Of course, there are a whole range of steps and tactics that can be taken to enhance your recovery. But fundamentally, what I want you to leave today with is that mindset that recovery is not a luxury, it's a necessity. You are not neglecting your professional duties. Quite the contrary, you are enhancing your ability to perform at an even higher level, and crucially, to sustain that level of performance over the longer term. That is why you are investing in recovery. So it goes hand in glove in supporting your professional and personal aspirations. So please don't delay. Take some time to reflect and start building these simple steps into your calendar immediately. And I look forward to hearing from you and the feedback on the results that you've received as a consequence. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.